What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Perfectly Blended podcast. Today is season 5, episode 10, and you wouldn't believe who's getting interviewed today. It's us. That's coming up
right now.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Perfectly Blended podcast. This podcast is for blended families, for couples that want to strengthen their marriage and want a brighter future. Perfectly Blended exists to break the stigma of divorce, drop the shame and guilt holding you back, and equip marriages to thrive instead of just survive. We believe all that is possible in this life is based on the power of Jesus Christ and His ability to restore us fully. Let's dive in.
Oh boy.
What is going on? This is so exciting. We're actually not in our normal studio today. We're on site of an amazing friend's home. And so today we actually have something special that we get to do that we've never done before, and that we are going to have our best friends, Doug and Stacey Linstrom, interview us today.
Hi.
Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah. Do you have anything that's on your mind or heart that you want to talk about so I can do my phone real quick?
Well, typically I like to talk and give a little prelude to what we're going to be talking about, but Josh and I also like to live life on the edge. And our friends have developed some questions for us and we don't know what they are. So you think that I have word diarrhea sometimes. I'm really going to have it tonight. And you're going to see the real-time facial expressions and everything else that comes with it if I don't like something.
Hey, I think that's fun. I think that's super fun. Oh, Priscilla Dark says, looking great, Stacey and Doug, and Josh and Kristy. They're looking good too. Okay.
Nope, you guys can tune in to them. It's fine.
Mark's remarks like Doug and Stacey. So exciting. Yeah, so I am cross-posting this right now as we are sitting here.
But what we were talking about is we've never interviewed them on our podcast.
Yep.
And you want to know whose idea was to interview us? It was theirs. So once we become like big and famous or whatever, these guys are going to be our managers to actually make good decisions.
Yeah. As long as I can get on the stage for just a couple minutes.
Well, of course, because Stacey loves the stage. We all know that. Kayla Bush goes, hey, I know them. Hey, I know those people. So I'm letting everybody know to join us now because we're on live. I'm making sure to post that across all of our social media before we get started. I want to give everybody an opportunity to climb on. And so if you don't know anything about our podcast, if this is your first time ever joining us, Kristy and I have a real big heart, and we know that Doug and Stacey too, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But we really care about couples and blended families. And so Kristy and I are part of a blended family.
We don't care about the other couples.
We don't care about anybody else except for couples of blended families. So,
just kidding.
I don't think she is. But that's why we started this. That's the whole reason why. Is we feel like in the church community, there's just not enough information or awareness for blended families. So if you're joining us today, welcome and stay tuned. I'm sure this is going to be extremely entertaining. Today.
For us, at least.
Yeah, right, for us. We'll probably have a really good time. We hope you get to enjoy it along the way. All right, so are we ready to get started?
Yeah.
Ready?
Well, first off, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about you guys first? Give everybody kind of a snippet of who Doug and Stacey is.
They're not a blended family.
We are a blended family.
They are a blended family.
We are a blended family.
Yeah.
So, we've been married for, it'll be 5 years in September. And I have 2 children. They are older, Spencer and Jessica. They're in their 30s. And Doug has 2 boys.
Yeah. One's graduating this year. We have Cameron and Noah, who's in 8th grade. And he is, So
that's who you are.
That's who we are.
Yeah. So let us know too in the chat if you're on right now. Let us know. Make sure you can hear us well. We want to make sure that we're projecting our voices loud enough. We know it's kind of difficult to make sure that we're all projecting our voices. So let us know if there is an issue.
This is the first time we've had this many people on all at the same time.
Twice as many.
Live, like in person.
Yeah. So I want to make sure that everybody is able to hear exactly what's going on. So it's super important for us. Okay. So, all right. Are we ready?
It's super important for them.
More important for you than us, yes.
I have the first question here.
All right.
So, easy one. Just want to know the backstory of how you guys became a blended family.
You want me to? You do this one.
Okay. You'll correct me. So I actually met Josh when I was 18 and he was like 21 and I was dating his best friend at the time. And I got to meet his mom back then and all of those things. So him and I really did. Well, I really didn't like him back then. He liked me, but I didn't like him.
Wow. That's probably true. That's probably true.
Then we went off and got married separately, you know, not each other. And then when he was divorced and I was going through a divorce, I reached out to him and asked if he'd consider dating me, which
that was a hard yes.
Yeah, even though I didn't like him back then, I still liked him. You know what I mean? So I reached out to him, and he did agree to go on a date with me. And then come to find out, I was going to church then. He wasn't, but I was actively drinking. I was an alcoholic, and he was a year and a half sober.
Yep.
So God worked all of that out. We ended up getting married. We have no kids of our own. Josh has 2, girl and a boy.
We don't have any children together.
Yeah. Josh has 2. I have 2. Yeah. Similar to Stacey.
Something that we like to say, though, to a lot of people is that I showed Kristy sobriety, and she showed me the path to church. And so I think she actually had the better give on that one.
I showed him Jesus.
She did. She did, and everything has changed ever since.
Obviously, it's a much longer story than we have time to share now.
Yeah.
But
we've been together for 11 years, and blending has been...
oh, yeah, I should have said that. 11 years.
Blending has been difficult in the very, very beginning, but we're at the point now to where our youngest is 18 years old, and we have really found some real greatness that's in our blended family and in our marriage. And, you know, it's been just an amazing journey. It's been tough, but it's been fruitful.
And now
we're grateful and thankful.
Through God. We started our podcast a couple years ago, and now we've been coaching marriages. We're marriage coaches for blended families, and God is just really amazing. So keep God at the center of your marriage.
Amen to that.
And people need you. They need your advice.
Oh, I love you.
Thanks, Stacey.
We go to...
What church do you go to? Yeah, we go to Emmanuel in Flint on Richfield Road. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Priscilla Dart. So
we go there too.
And Doug and Stacey attend there as well. So we've been going there for about 8 years. About 8 years now, and it's been really great. And so
that's a funny story too, but we don't have
that's
time
a whole other story.
It's another episode, right?
Yeah, that's a whole other episode. Yeah.
You wives, you learn to be submissive to your husband, and see, God blesses it, because I didn't want to go to that church, and he did.
Yeah, we showed up. I'm like, wasn't that great? She's like, no. Yeah.
It is now.
It is.
Okay.
So kind of following up on that, why do you guys feel like you have a desire to help marriages and serve marriages, in particular blended families?
You take this.
You want me to go?
Yeah, I already know what I want to say.
Okay, so I don't want to steal your thunder because
you go ahead.
Okay, so I think a big part of it is that, you know, Kristy and I for a lot of years have really wanted to do something together. We really felt like we worked through recovery really strong. We worked in our faith really strong. We've really did a lot of consumption of books and things that just really add value to our lives, and just be able to hopefully be able to pass that value on to other people. And we've stumbled across so many things trying over the years just to be able to serve and serve and serve. And we decided 2 years ago to hire a business coach.
Yeah.
And in hiring this business coach, which was not cheap, we hired her to tell us what we wanted to hear. And that was for us to go and be leadership coaches for business. And we believe that's really where God had us. Kristy has found success in the corporate world, and leadership is something that's near and dear to each of us. And so we thought that was a strength of ours. And so in doing that, we hired this
because of Celebrate Recovery.
Because of Celebrate Recovery, we're a major part of that. And all of this together, so we get hire this coach, this business coach.
She's way more expensive than us too, and you only get one with her.
Yeah.
You get 2.
Touche. And so she told us exactly what we didn't want to hear, that she told us that we shouldn't be business coaches. And after we got done being mad and angry and wanting to fire this lady,
me more than him,
we really dove into what she was, what her perspective was, and that was that, she's like, your marriage and your family, it doesn't make sense, the success that you've had, and that you guys are staying faithful to Christ, and your family is finding success, and your marriage is finding success. This is something that apparently God has done amazing things in your life, and that you should spend the rest of your life serving others in the same fashion. And once we allow that to sink in and really, we've embraced it ever since. It's been a blessing.
Mm-hmm.
Really glad you guys have done that, because we both have seen it in our lives personally, but also in the church that we go to, how much you guys have served at the church, but in each other, with our relationship with you guys, but in so many different people's lives that you guys are in and around your sphere of influence. It's been great to see.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks. Mm-hmm.
Do you have anything you want to add to that? Did I miss anything?
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to steal your thunder.
Okay.
It's weird talking. I'm just gonna be honest. It's weird talking about ourselves.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable actually.
Yeah, it is.
All right,
weird.
that's good.
So, John, this was a really good idea.
Yeah, that's what your viewers want to see.
You guys would know. See?
Right?
Just wait until question number 5.
Oh, great.
let it roll.
Oh boy. All right. So we'd like to know, how has your faith played a role in your marriage and your family?
So, how faith has played a role with me personally is God has a design for our lives. And if you're watching, you know that our marriage, our podcast, we're Christians. And so our podcast is always Christian based. We try to make it as biblical as possible with God at the center. So everyone that's watching, if you're not a Christian, this may not make sense to you. And if you want to hear about becoming a Christian or what that means, please reach out to us. But if you are a Christian, you should understand that God has the design for the world in general. And it starts very simply with how to live individually, how to live as a Christian. Look that up in Ephesians if you need to, but also how a marriage is designed to be. And we fight against that as humans because we think we know better, or we're prideful, or we don't want to follow all the rules that God put in place for us. But really, if you align your life and your marriage with how God has designed it, the peace and the blessings that come from it are amazing. So for me personally, a lot of you that have watched the podcast in the past, you may know that I was severely abused growing up, sexually and physically. And when I got to be older, I decided that no one, especially a man, was going to tell me what to do or how to live my life or have any type of control over me. And if you're familiar with the Bible at all, even if you're not and you're a female, you probably are familiar with the section that says you should be submissive to your husband. So that is a huge thing for women, and especially for me, I had a huge problem with it. But what God has designed is for him, if I'm his biggest fan and I'm his biggest cheerleader, I want him to be successful. And he can't be successful for what God has designed him to be in our marriage unless I fall in line and I'm not really being submissive to him. I'm being submissive to my Lord and Savior by doing what God has asked me to do. So that has been a huge thing for me, because my husband said something that was just mind-boggling to me when he said it, that my husband loves me, and it says in the Bible that men are to love their wives as Christ loved the church. And everyone talks about that. Women be submissive, men love like Christ loved the church. And Josh one day on our podcast, so I can't remember what episode it was, had said yes, and what men need to remember is the church didn't always love God back, but God always loved the church. And that is what he has done for me to make me want to be submissive to him. And if that word is negative to you, or you're uncomfortable with that word, that tells you that there's a root inside of you that needs to be dug up. And only God can do that, because I don't cringe from that word anymore, because I'm being submissive to my Lord and Savior, which I want to be, and falling in line what he has designed me in our marriage.
Yeah, and I think faith for me is the exact same thing. Is that it's not about my opinion. I thought you were going to
say exact opposite. I'm like,
no,
whoa.
It definitely isn't. But faith for me in my marriage and in my life is just that. It's about Josh being submissive. And it's about being vulnerable and open and honest with Josh, so I can be open and vulnerable and honest with Kristy in my marriage. And the only way that I can do that is not out of just pure will and gumption and drive, because I have all those things. It's when I finally decided to learn that once I do this for Jesus and Jesus alone, it's a byproduct that I automatically do it for my spouse. And so faith isn't just something that's part of our family. It is the thing that is our family. It is our marriage. And I understand that today better than ever. And that Do we struggle still? Yeah, we still struggle. I mean, sometimes I'm wrong, and that's really hard. And Kristy points But the truth is that no matter how perfect you live your life, things are still going to go wrong. But if you're relying on everything to be perfect because of your actions, things fall apart. Right. But we serve a perfect Christ. And because of that, I know that my marriage will work always and forever. And so faith gives me hope each and every day, no matter what the circumstances are.
Well, and I think for women, you need to understand that being submissive doesn't mean that you are losing yourself into your husband. Amen. And that you don't have an opinion anymore. Josh and these two can attest. I'm a very opinionated just because I'm submissive to him and I do want him to be the leader of our home. I am still very opinionated. I'm still very stubborn. I'm still very loud, but my husband loves me that way. Yeah. So it's not intimidating for me to go to him and have him listen to what I'm about to say or like, I don't agree with this, but he is still the leader of the home. So if he's like, no, I really feel like we should go this way. If my husband is a God Christ follower and I don't agree with him and he's like, no, I have a feeling we're supposed to go this way. That may be something God is placing on him to lead our family into. I need to trust in that. Yeah. And then if it goes awry, he'll get convicted, like, hey, you need to go apologize to your wife. And then he comes and tells me he's sorry. And I don't go, I told you so. You know, I just say, thank you for apologizing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So it's that I could be in a whole soapbox about this.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Faith is important.
Faith in your marriage.
And in your kids, like you can't, and that's a delicate balance, right? You don't want to push your kids so hard that they run away, but you don't want to not push your kids at all to where they are entitled brats, right? And they don't seek God for things. And it is a delicate balance. We have 4 kids and they're all very different with how they feel about God, ranging from one that doesn't feel like he wants to believe in God at all to one that is massively goes to church every Sunday and the 2 in between.
Yep.
And you can't worry about that. You have to give them over to the God and do the best you can.
Yeah. And that's hard sometimes.
Yeah. It's very hard.
It's hard most of the time for us.
Yes.
Yeah. Kids.
Yeah.
Kids. Wish we could kill them. I'm just kidding.
Well, strike that.
Strike that.
Wait, this is live?
And I'm into that forever.
So I want to go back to actually your very first podcast. Do you guys remember that?
We
do.
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay, so
the recorded
I'll refresh your memory.
Okay, refresh my memory. Oh, so, how to bridge the Christian gap.
That's right.
That's
right.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
That's right.
So how to bridge the
notes.
Christian gap. So going back to that first podcast, how to bridge the Christian gap, what do you think that you guys have gained? What insight do you think you have gained since that first podcast, specifically to that topic? So could you draw on that maybe today, thinking back to that topic? If you were to do that podcast over, what is something that you would maybe draw on?
So for me personally, I believe I understand the bridge to be much wider and longer now. Mm-hmm. And so I believe when we first started this podcast in general, we started it as the Couple on Fire podcast. Mm-hmm. And it was a labor of love and we loved it. And the purpose for us starting that though was to help bridge the Christian gap because of we feel or felt like outsiders. We feel like we're in a weird position, right? Where we became, we were non-believers or lived a non-believer life for a long time. And now we're believers. And so we feel like but the more that we've done this, the more that God has opened our eyes that there's so many different types of people now that are on this bridge. The bridge is much wider and much longer. And that so many other people feel that they're stuck in this bridged area, that they're not connected fully on either side. And it's kind of amazing, like when I first got into the Christian community, I was very standoffish, and Kristy can attest to this. My wife is one of the greatest leaders that I know, and she knows how to lead me. And that's a powerful thing for a woman, especially when you have a type A husband that digs his heels in and knows everything and, all the things, right? And so Kristy knew how important it was for us to get involved in the Christian community. And I was very standoffish for all the reasons why I feel like living on the bridge. And so once we started getting involved, there's a lot of funny stories with this. I started to understand like, these people are really no different than me. Mm-hmm. We're all the same. We're all on the bridge. Yeah. And so if I could go back, for me personally, go back and redo this episode, I believe that it's so much more connected, so many more other types of people than what I even thought then.
Yeah. Your guys' life has really been about bridging that gap. I mean, that's what I find so interesting to me. And I look back at what you guys do and how you guys are so involved in the church, and that's why I kind of like this question. What about you?
So our relationship is God is at the center of everything in our life, only because if we actually sat down and told you all our life from beginning to end, even from when we've met, none of it makes sense. And when you can't make sense of it, like, how did this happen? How did this happen? You can only explain God, right? Because we make our plans and God directs our steps. And for us, the reason why we started making the podcast, for me personally, to bridge the Christian gap, it's because I actually was raised in church, kind of. So I grew up in a blended family. My dad didn't go to church regularly. My mom did, but every other weekend I was at my dad's. So I did have a pretty strong or pretty big ties to understanding the church community. As far as, the church I grew up in, I don't pretend to know all denominations, but the church community and the Bible and what they stood for. And he was a new believer in his, later in life. So, and I had fallen away. So wasn't living for God for like over 20 years at least. And so when we got together and we started seeing how what we felt were the generational Christians in the church, how unpassionate they were, if that was a word, for like so many people in the church. You may not want to go to church because you say there's hypocrites in there, and there is, and we are some of those people, right? Like, we're all hypocrites. Yeah. But so many people want to sit and argue about the carpet, or argue about the stained glass windows, or they want to argue about the music, or they want to argue about these things. But a lot of the times that's our pride. Like, where in the Bible does it say no drums on the stage, right? It talks about cymbals and harps and making a joyful noise unto the Lord. It doesn't say anywhere in the Bible. You want to base your opinions off of biblical principles, not where you've kind of become legalistic a little bit. So Josh and I wanted to come back and start bridging the Christian gap for people that came back to God or accepted God as their savior later in life, that start going in the church and you kind of feel like, why are they so, like, God is amazing. Like, God is changing our lives. God is so big, and all these little things are so unimportant. And newcomers coming into the church, they feel like lost, but the people that have been in church forever, they're actually uncomfortable. They don't really know how to relate. Do I talk to them too much and scare them away? Do I not talk to them enough and then they're offended? So we really wanted to...
We've done both.
We just wanted to help bring up podcasts for a community of people, for people that have been in church their whole lives. That's what bridging is. You're not one-sided in this.
That's right.
It is this side and this side. How can we come together for Jesus? We are the hands and feet of Christ, and move forward together to reach more people to go to heaven. That's the goal. And we just want to help bridge that for God. Not that we're God, not that we save people. We just feel like
we're the hands and feet.
God wants us doing this among other people. If you want to start a podcast, start a podcast. It's God needs people that aren't afraid, to do it. Yeah. And we're all afraid, but do it anyway,
Right.
Just like Stacey.
I do a lot of things afraid.
You do.
Okay, so where do you guys see yourselves and the podcast like 3 to 5 years from now? Where do you hope to be?
You want me to go?
Yeah, spearhead this.
Oh my gosh. So I hope that we can eventually change the name from Perfectly Blended to possibly Marriage on Fire, just because we're so in love with the Couple on Fire. But I would love to see more people watching it and then reaching out to us, maybe asking us how they too could do something for God and what they feel God is putting on their hearts. I feel like this would maybe possibly be able to start a movement for other people to start a movement. I talk all the time about how I don't ever want to hold somebody back. And if someone is 3 or 4 steps behind me personally, use me to propel yourself forward. God may have you fly way past me on what he wants you to do in your life. And that's God's choice to do that. So I just really pray that our podcast is still going. We love it. We never plan on stopping to do it. That we can have more guests on there, that people get saved from watching it. Marriages are saved from watching it. Children of blended families know that they are loved and that all blended families are difficult and step parents aren't always easy to love, or you're in the middle and that's normal, of loyalty lines. And I just hope it brings education and awareness that it's okay. Like we're all welcome to the human race, right?
Yeah, I think we live in a noisy world, and I think it's real easy to get caught up in trying to have a voice in this world and advocate for others. Kristy and I want to advocate for blended marriages. It's something that we have a heart's desire for, and and it's a lot of work. And the reward is something that's probably unseen. God's the one in the background handling that and taking care of those things. So I really pray that in the next 3 to 5 years that God can take and really heal some serious marriages out of any efforts that God has given us the opportunity to be part of. It's, when you're talking about blended families and divorce rates, we're talking 70% and above, 70% and above. And blended families in the church are not hand raisers. We're not sticking our hands up and saying, hey, we have problems, help us out. And so we pray that this podcast has an opportunity to reach those that normally wouldn't have an opportunity for it to reach, and for them to find hope. We have stories, and we have friends, and we have, interviews, and we have, all kinds of opportunities to be able to share hope with others. And so I pray that God can take this, which he can. And I pray that, he continues to give us the strength and, sustain us through this, because it's tough in a noisy world. But we know how important it is. And so we pray that God continues to bless it.
Well, what I was just going to add something on what you said, but the reason why I was going to talk about the hand raiser thing, but it's no different than like an alcoholic walking into church. They don't come in the church and be like, hey, I'm new here, I'm an alcoholic. And what's funny though is Celebrate Recovery, which Josh and I are heavily involved with in our church as well. Celebrate Recovery has really, praise the Lord for what he's done with Celebrate Recovery and Reformers Unanimous, the Christian-based recovery programs. That has really opened up for churches to be more vulnerable, to allow people in, be comfortable with how to talk to those people, but also for those people to come into the church and be a hand raiser. And in a lot of churches, there's hardly even any marriage things, let alone blended marriage things. So that's why it is a very, very high need, low demand industry as far as blended families go in the Christian community. And what I would really hope for is in 3 to 5 years that blended families can come in and be comfortable raising their hand, because there is an awareness in a community within the church already that has been created for them to come in and say, I'm a blended family too, where can I help? And that's what I would really love. I'd love to be able to go to other churches and speak to pastors on this and help be a part of whatever it is that is needed.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, you guys did good. Thanks.
Well, hopefully we can keep it going with this one here. So we have, we've watched so many of your podcasts, and we feel like you guys have always been so very transparent with, each other and your family. So have you guys ever found yourself or your family in maybe a situation or a season that just isn't working, no matter how much you feel like all of the boxes are being checked, like biblically, like just, oh gosh, everything should be working right now, but it's just not.
Yeah.
Have you ever found yourself there? And what do you think about that? Or could you share what that's like?
So I actually had a conversation with my mom today. Okay. And so my mom is a believer in Christ, right? She doesn't go to church. She doesn't attend church. She's had a really bad experience as a child. And so her and I go back and forth on this, right? And so over the years, we've been going to Emmanuel for 8 years, and I had an opportunity one time to get on stage on a Sunday and talk and speak. And so she came to that, but she's never come again. And so we had a really great conversation today, and it was basically about these things. And for me, trying to let her understand how important it is that the Bible is infallible. Like it's whole and it's pure in its entirety. And we don't get to pick and choose the things that we like out of it. And I think that's been a real hard thing with the way that my family is compared to the way that I try to live my life, because the judgment feels like it goes both directions. And so, I was talking to her today and explaining to her why it's hard for me to have specific relationships with specific people in my family, because I really try to live my life a specific way, but it's not to be better than them. It's because I'm trying to live above reproach and be a better Josh today than what he was yesterday. And so I don't know if I'm answering the question the way you've asked it, but I feel like, it causes strain, but I feel like it's my job to withhold what God has given me in my care, and that's his word. And in doing that, that even means with the closest people in my family is to always abide by what he says. And so those are really hard conversations. Yeah. And I try not to shy away from those, but I try to treat them with care.
Okay.
That's me.
So in our family, like personally with Josh and I, there was a time that we, for a lengthy period of time, I feel we're checking all the boxes. We were going to church. We were taking our kids to church. We had family fun nights on Fridays. We would do a devotional beforehand. We would have all the boys' friends would want to come over our house for family fun night, and play these awesome games. We were close. We felt like we were checking all the boxes, right? Mm-hmm. And that was probably one of the worst times in our life when it came to, especially one of our children in particular. That was one of the times that he decided he wasn't going to go to church anymore. I wasn't going to make him go to church anymore. And if he made me, he was going to move out and go live with his dad. And how would I like that type of thing? Mm-hmm. And that was a very, very painful time for us that made us actually... we were so on fire as a family as a whole, we thought. Mm-hmm. And what really opened our eyes to is that we didn't talk to our kids enough about how they were actually feeling about our family and where we were. We were doing all these things, and yes, they had the fun family part, but when we sat down to do devotionals, they'd kind of be like, and they'd participate in stuff, but we just thought that was normal kid stuff. Right. And when that happened, he actually moved out and moved in with his dad for a little over a week, I think. And his dad told him, you need to make up with your mom because I can't take this type of thing.
It was under a week.
Yeah. And so I took him out to dinner and we talked, and he wasn't really remorseful. He really was like, I don't like you forcing me to do this. Mm-hmm. So I really had to take a step back because I do have control issues. Mm-hmm. I do like things a specific way in my brain. And I really felt like, God has done so much for me. And you lose sight of that even as a parent. Like, you can be too overbearing for your friends and all of these things. But when you really turn your life over to God and he really starts blessing you and you can feel that relationship with him, no one can experience that unless they experience it for themselves. Yeah. And no matter how much we forced our kids, and really, like, we were doing everything, Sundays, Wednesdays, devotionals, like all of these things, it really was too much for them if we would have taken a step back and asked them how they were feeling about what we were doing and how we were living, and if it was too much, which made him completely turn away. And he's never really been the same since when it comes to church. He will go occasionally, like once a year, with us, but it really made us take a step back to talk to them. It's what we do, right? It's not about going to the church building. It is, once you're a believer and you're a Christian, God has called us to not stop gathering together.
Correct.
But when your kids aren't necessarily believers, it's not about getting them in the church. It's about you being the church to them and really sitting down and talking with them. Our kids know where we stand with God. Everything in our life, conversations revolve around God as much as we think and can possibly do. And that's what's going to make the greatest impact on them. So that's a time that we were checking all the boxes, and it did not. It came to a screeching halt in a matter of one night. Mm-hmm. So
impact influence, that's all we have.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for answering that. Yeah. It's tough.
It is tough. Okay. So when you consider things like social media and strong worldly influences, peer pressure, what do you think has the biggest impact on relationships today?
You go first.
She's like, you go first.
Or you want me to go first?
No, I'll go.
I'll go.
No, I think that unfortunately in the world today that social media really plays a specific role in bending things the way that the world wants you to see things and not the reality. And I can only speak from a man's view, right? I can't speak from a woman's view. Men, for all the years and still today, men are supposed to be a specific way. We're supposed to be tough and strong, and we're supposed to be this presence of strength. But it never shows the side that really sustains true marriages. And that's the side that's humbleness and vulnerability and the willingness to cater to your spouse in a way that's special to them. And so social media really plays a role in both of those. So, I mean, we know that sex is a huge thing in the world, and social media really plays a role on that. And it puts, it puts our spouses in a specific bucket where it's unfair, and on both sides. And so, as a man, it's we have to understand that God has given us His Word, and social media is fine as long as we understand that it's there for a purpose, and that the purpose to all the information isn't, it's discernment is what it comes down to, but it's not all supposed to feed in and tell us everything about the way we're supposed to live our lives. And so I try to help raise our boys, in a way that says it's not just about being strong and standing up for what's right, but it's also about being right. And in doing that is what God tells us. Be in touch with your emotions and your feelings, and being catering to your spouse and loving her the way that she needs, not the way the world tells us we're supposed to.
Well, and boys are taught to not be emotional, right?
Yeah.
And it is.
Yeah.
But I think social media has played a role in relationships similar to what Josh says, but two things. One, social media and phones have played a massive dramatic role in relationships, because you don't pay attention to each other even though you're sitting in the same room.
Yeah.
Like, you're both sitting on your phone. It doesn't, regardless of what you're looking at, whether it's comedians or whatever, it plays a massive, massive wedge between marriages, because you can be laying in bed together or sitting in the same room together and not paying attention to each other at all. And Josh and I are guilty of that. And we have to put each other in check and try to, in a loving way, because we both agree when we think about it, to say, yeah, we really need to put our phones down. We just talked about it the other day with our family, with our kids. Our kids come in the room and want to talk to us, and we're talking to our kids, but on our phones at the same time.
Yeah.
That's disrespectful. It's showing them that that's disrespectful. So we really need to, we're addicted as humans to our phones now. We're addicted. And it's like, you set your phone down, I'll find myself in the middle of a conversation, just picking it, not even thinking about it, just picking up my phone. I'm addicted to that, which is bad. Too much of anything is a bad thing. So I think that was one thing. But the other thing is the like Josh said, sex is what runs our country. I feel like it is, women are the sex objects and men are sexual. And I feel like there's a lot of broken people in general, but women specifically we want to be loved. Men want to be respected, right? I mean, it's biblical. So women that are in broken marriages or just single and broken, they're putting themselves out there in a sexual way, or they're being paid to be, a porn star or something to get the attention that they need or that they're seeking out in the world. And then there's men that are married or not married that are allowing themselves to submit to that temptation when they know that they shouldn't be on there, and they find themselves looking at things they shouldn't be looking at. And you only get a couple seconds, and women can be faulty of this too, to find themselves looking at a man. I don't struggle with that personally, and it is less common in women, yes, but there is still women out there. But men have to take the responsibility to, if they immediately, not wonder, I'm just enjoying God's handiwork. No, that's not what God would want you to do. In fact, that's disrespectful to God to say that, especially if you're married. He would want you to only have eyes for your spouse. So I think social media has caused problems in marriages by drawing the marriages apart. Satan wants to divide and conquer, and that's what he wants to do. Yeah. So he wants to separate where you feel lonely. You feel lonely in your own marriage, and which it happens to us. You have to communicate. Communication is the foundation of a marriage. So I think it separates, and then that's what opens it up to sexual problems within the marriage. Because once you're separated and you're not communicating anymore, you're more susceptible to more things. And the devil knows it, and society knows it. So,
yeah.
Interesting. Have you guys ever had any type of boundaries or type of anything that you guys have set up for each other or for yourselves? With that?
Yeah, so we've done something years ago when we first started Celebrate Recovery. I started getting, we had separate Facebook accounts. And what ended up happening is I started getting private message from people that wanted to come to Celebrate Recovery, but it happened to be females. And we knew instantly that was going to be an issue. And it's not an issue because I wanted these things to happen. It was an issue because it's an issue for those types of things. So Kristy and I instantly talked, and we were like, look, we're going to join our Facebook accounts.
Yeah.
And listen, it's not socially acceptable to do that, okay? As a guy, other guys are like, oh, yeah, you're on a Facebook account with your wife. Like, I don't care what other guys think, though. Like, I don't care. Like, I care. Nobody lives in my house and has my wife but me. And so this is my relationship. And so, we really got to a point where we're like, it doesn't matter. We want to preserve what we have at all costs. So some things that we do still today is passwords are given out at all times. Her face is in my phone. My face is in her phone. Passwords to everything, like nothing's hidden. We're an open book. And I think a lot of times, at least as a man, our pride can get the best of us and say, she should trust me. She's insecure and that's not my problem. It is your problem. First off, we're all insecure. And so, we have to be willing to say, my spouse matters to me and I accept her and any insecurities, including my own. And if I'm blaming that, then I must have something to hide. And so we've really embraced that in our marriage and said, will never be a problem.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And we don't hug members of the opposite sex.
Yep.
Now, it's not like we're hard-nosed about it. Like we had somebody pass away in our
stiff arming somebody.
We had someone pass away in our worship team that was very close to all of us on the worship team at church. And all of us were hugging one another, when we were all talking about him and things like that. We're not, insensitive to those things.
Yeah.
But we also always go to bed at the same time. He falls asleep much later than I fall asleep, but we still go to bed at the same time. We don't make it a common thing to go out and have a girls' night or a guys' night, like where we're spending a night away from each other, unless it's for work or something that's planned or something that's
church related.
Yeah. And so we don't do that. And the joining the accounts and things like that. We really, you have to understand that the devil only needs a toe. Like he only needs a toe in the door. And you have to, and every family's different, but compromise, it starts with what music are you guys listening to? What type of movies are you watching? Like, what podcasts? Like, how are you praying together? It starts with those little itty bitty things that will lead to you're not going to bed at the same time. You're spending nights apart. You really are agitated. You're not communicating. And the next thing you know, it's like, oh, I'm having an affair. That it doesn't happen overnight. This is long, drawn out things. And that's how people are like, oh, this small compromise is not that big a deal. It's a huge deal because once you start accepting this, you're going to start accepting this and then this. And the next thing you know, you're competing against each other with who's farthest away instead of who's closest together. Like if he doesn't care, I'm not going to care. Yeah. That's wrong. You want your marriage to fail if you're saying that. So you really, really, really need to watch the small little things that keep you guys connected.
Yeah, I want to challenge everybody. This is like one of my favorite questions. And I want to challenge anybody that's watching right now that's married is ask yourself and have your spouse ask yourselves this specific question and see if you're applying this in your marriage currently, because there's a lot of power in this. This is a great question.
Awesome.
If you say, I don't care if he looks at other people, you're lying to yourself.
It's so unhealthy.
Right.
To yourself.
Yeah. Right. This is a powerful question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully we can have fun with this question.
Oh, good.
Yes. So, all right. So
let's get up on the table.
You guys are both big on accountability, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Can I get
absolutely.
an audible yes?
Yes.
Okay. So you guys are both
That's
big
fun. Like, what's he just like fun?
So you guys are big on accountability. So have you ever had a podcast and had to have accountability afterwards to something like a particular topic? Like, you don't do that. No, let's go back and have this conversation over again. Have you guys ever had like that? Is there a fun or funny conversation that happened afterwards?
I can't think of any.
Mm-mm.
No, we're very...
I was super mad. We've shared this story before. I was super mad about going live. So we
This is true. That's fun.
Josh talks me into things sometimes, and then I get angry about it. And so...
Not to drag up an old story.
This is actually a good
So
one.
our first podcast that Doug had brought up, if you watch that podcast, it's pre-recorded.
Pre-recorded.
And I was very comfortable with that because if I can have word diarrhea, okay? And I say things or I stick my foot in my mouth. And now I've learned that's just part of my charm, okay? And the people that know me, think that's funny, and the people that don't like me don't, and that's okay. You're not my people, you know? So, but the very first, he's like, I really think, babe, that we should go live. I think, you know, it connects with people more. They can interact with us. And I'm like, okay. But then the night of, and we're coming down to like 10 minutes before we go, I sit down and I am mad. I'm like, you talked me into this. I didn't even want to do this. This is so stupid. You're always talking to me into things I don't want to do. You know? Great. And he was just like, fine, okay, there's nothing I can do about it now. We won't go live anymore. Blah, 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 you know? And we get done with it, and we're all done, and I'm like, that wasn't so bad. Yeah, that wasn't so bad.
I don't remember apology, though.
No.
That's great.
No, I'm sorry.
Better late
But
never.
I was so mad at him for that. But I don't think there's ever really been, we don't really correct each other. Mm-hmm. He lovingly, we've talked lovingly, if you watch our podcast, that I've rewatched some of them, and I'm like, I'm dumb. Sometimes. Like, we're talking about points, and I go off on this tangent that has nothing to do with the point. In my brain at the time, it makes complete sense. Right? And then he's really good after I get done talking on 57 different rabbit trails, wrapping it back around. Yeah. But he's never corrected me on that. Mm-hmm. He tells me, you be you, babe. I will bring it back in. Mm-hmm. But that's the only thing we've really talked about is how I can kind of go. Yeah, but
I don't mind though. Like, you do like to talk, and that's cool with me. I'm fine with that. I pay attention to the time. I want to make sure that we're courteous of everybody that's on, so I know how to bring it back around. But I don't find that as a problem.
You like to talk too.
I do like to talk.
That's why it works though.
But I don't find it as a problem, right? And I don't find it as a problem at all. Yeah. No, we've never gotten done and was like, how dare you? Like, we've never had that.
That's fine.
We've never had that.
No, I wouldn't think so.
Yeah. No.
I wouldn't think so.
We're pretty comfortable with what each other would say.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Don't bring up pop cans, though.
Okay.
What about pop cans?
That's never been on a podcast.
That's a whole other episode.
All right. So we'll wrap it up with this last question. So what single piece of advice would you give yourselves if you could go back to the beginning?
Oh. You going first?
Me?
Yeah?
Oh, man, I like it when you go first, so it gets my thoughtful juices flowing.
Your juices are thoughtful flowing right now.
What piece of advice would I think, I don't really know how I feel about this question, because I feel like I wish we would have I don't like that we changed our name. Okay, so.
Of the podcast.
No, it was Couple on Fire, and it's now Perfectly Blended. And we tried to rename it Perfectly Blended because we wanted everyone to know it's geared more towards blended families, which it really didn't start out that way. You know, it was the Couple on Fire for Jesus. But now I really think I wish it would be Marriage on Fire. So I really wish you can't get anything done unless you just do it. Okay, you don't want to get stuck in analysis paralysis or anything.
I'm good at that.
But I do wish that we would have sat down a little bit. I fell in love with Couple on Fire so much. But we really would have thought maybe 5 years, 7 years, 10 years down the road where we would have seen our niche, you know, at where we could see God taking it and really put a little bit more thought into it that would have encompassed what we're really passionate about, which Betsy had already told us, our business coach. It's for marriages, right? But we were doing Couple on Fire already at that time.
We were.
But I really just wish we could go back and really... we should have started live, and we didn't. And we really would have had it geared more towards marriages back then. Now, don't get me wrong. We've had a lot of great people like Steve Gilliland on our podcast and things like that don't have anything to do with blended families.
Yeah.
But I just wish it would have been more geared to what our passion is now. But we probably would have gotten there if we wouldn't have just started. So
yeah, so I want to actually not talk about any of that. I want to talk about the beginning of our relationship and our family.
Is that what the question was? I thought you said podcast.
So I don't
Well,
know.
Give yourself.
Yeah, no, that's fine. You talk about
podcast or
no, did I miss
personally?
it? Did you say relationship?
It's okay.
So you would give yourselves if you could go back to the beginning.
So Kristy talked right. That would be the advice that she would give about this. But I want to say in the beginning of our relationship, one thing that I wish we would have done differently that we didn't know that we know now is that when her and I fell in love and we were ready to go and we were like ready to move in together and we didn't give ourselves any time. We didn't give ourselves any time to allow our children to have a say-so or to, any type of that.
I want to re-answer.
And so,
you can go again.
And so you don't have to re-answer.
I do.
But this is what my mind went on this question, was in the very beginning of our relationship as blended family. And so we jumped right into it. First off, we moved in together. Kristy was still married, getting divorced. And I mean, let's air all the dirty laundry. We did. And we lived together, right? And she told her grandma, and her grandma's like, ooh, sinner. And we were doing it all wrong. We just did it all wrong. And, Kristy moved in with me and her two boys. They didn't have their own room and they're living in some other guy's house. And so, my son was super upset because
we started it all wrong.
Yeah. And so he ended up like shoving Garrett down, Kristy's oldest boy. And it was like not good. And, Josh was hateful. And so, we didn't allow us to really blend. What we did is we shoved everybody in a blender and just chopped it up. And it created a lot of animosity. And it's really offered up a lot of guilt over the years for us because we wish we could go back. Now, today things are great. Our kids are awesome.
Our kids are very close.
They're extremely close. And so God was at the center of that all along, right? And so we don't want to take any of that away. But, if we could go back and give ourselves advice, we'd say, hey, pump the brakes a little. We know you guys love each other. We know that this is going to be your forever relationship. We know, which means there's nothing wrong with going slow and doing this the right way for everybody that's involved and not just you two. And, and I think that's an easy thing to overlook when you know that you left a poor relationship, and things didn't work out and now you found your forever person. And to say, okay, we're ready to just do the chunky dunk. Let's dive in and let's get at it, making this life work. And unfortunately, it was really, really hard in the beginning for us because of that.
Yeah. So I misunderstood the question, so I'm sorry.
I don't think either way. It was either way.
Yeah, I don't think
so. The beginning of our relationship, which I came from a blended family, multiple different blending all the time, and he didn't. Like his dad is his adoptive dad, but his mom and dad, for all intents and purposes, that's all he knows as a dad.
Yeah, since I was like 1.
So they've always been together. So of course, when it came to us blending, I thought I knew best, and so when we first got together, we didn't talk to our kids, which I mentioned earlier. We didn't check in with our kids enough. But then I read Ron Deal's book just a couple of years ago called Smart Step Families. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that makes so much more sense.
I did it all wrong.
We didn't do it all wrong. But when we first got together, I really was like, we should not be taking our kids separately because that's going to create more of a division, which isn't actually true. If you read Ron Deal's book, if you're the biological parent and you're taking your kids out, it actually helps bridge the trust and love for the step parent because they feel safe enough to talk to you because you're the bio parent about how they're truly feeling, how they're being treated, if they really like the person, and you can help coach them and talk them through their feelings because they're kids, right? They're not mature enough to handle all those different emotions. They're mourning or grieving the loss from the marriage that ended their parents. And now they have this new thing and they're unsure if this is going to last or if this is going to stay. So it's a whole grieving process, a new process. And they see that you guys are happy. They want to be happy for you, but they're sad for their other parent. So you really should be talking to your kids more. And we should have been spending more time separately with our kids and also checking in with our kids, though.
We missed all of that.
About how they're feeling. Yeah, it was a huge miss. And I have a huge guilt for Garrett because of my oldest son, Garrett, because of his role change within the family. He had the biggest role change in our family. He went from the oldest boy to being the third oldest, second oldest boy in the family. So he had the biggest change, and it was just, and he has the biggest personality, so he was the most rebellious, and we didn't see it. So I have a lot of guilt about that.
Yeah.
So this is why you guys are perfect with doing this podcast and counseling and everything you do for blended families, really, because you've been through it. You did some things wrong. You learned from it. You can talk about it with experience. So that's why you're perfect.
And we just want to encourage other families. Like, I know you feel like it's all broken and wrong, but trust us. Like, if we can survive and thrive, like anybody can survive and thrive because we still live with some guilt. And, that's condemnation feeling. And that's not what God tells us. It's God has worked it all out for his good. And we try to live in that as we go through in life.
Yeah. They didn't die. And now they're God's.
Yep.
So
we turned them over. So, do you guys have any other questions?
No, I don't think so.
All right. Well, I have a question for you.
Mm.
All right.
He can
and
answer.
I would really like for each of you to answer this.
Oh my goodness.
So you guys mentioned last week or week before about interviewing us.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Share with everybody and share with us why.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you want to interview us? Why was that something that you would care to do?
Well, people need to know who you are, your viewers. You do talk a lot about yourselves, but you've never had anyone specifically ask you your thoughts, something you maybe wouldn't talk about amongst, without someone asking you.
Yeah.
But I wanted to be on your show.
Honesty is a wonderful thing.
You could have said, why don't you guys interview us?
No, this was more fun. I didn't have to do a lot of talking.
I don't know. I think that, honestly, I mean, I've thought about it a lot over the last couple of years, and I do appreciate both of your friendships so much. And I do think that, at the end of the day, you guys have great advice, but I know where the advice comes from. And I think that it comes from God, and I think that that's your heart. And I think that sometimes, like, maybe, it's good to see the personal side of it. It's good to see that it's messy sometimes, and it started out messy, and it doesn't have to stay that way. That there's God in the center of everything that you live, eat, and breathe daily. And you're doing a podcast now. I mean, bridging the Christian gap is something that started out back then, and it's still happening today. But God is still in the center of it. So I just feel like having some questions around that and being able to hear why and how it's got to this point, I thought was important for people to know.
And we're not special. So I appreciate you guys doing that, because I really want people out there, like, if God lays something on your heart, even to start a ministry within your church, or maybe it's not putting a podcast out there or something like that, but we're not special at all. And Josh and I really we struggle and have to encourage one another to be like, why are we putting out this podcast? Like, who actually cares? And that's Satan though, right? Like God, who cares? Like, who listens or doesn't listen? God will take it and do with it what he wants. Yeah. But we really are like, when we did our event last year, we struggled massively. I'll get emotional about it with that event, because who can, like, what makes us special to get up and talk in front of people? Right. And all God's doing is asking us to obey. And that's what we're doing. Yeah.
Throw the nuts. Throw the nuts. And so Kristy and I are honored to have you guys as friends. You guys, this friendship has been such a blessing to us. You guys have the biggest servant's heart out of anybody we've ever met. Yeah. And we feel like we can be authentic with you guys and real with you guys. And you guys will love and care about us no matter what.
Always.
We appreciate you guys so very much.
Yeah. You guys challenge us to be nicer.
To be better, to rise above and be stronger. And you guys care about your relationship in such a special way. And I think, that's a hard thing to find nowadays, which is sad to us. And so it just really draws us in that you guys love Jesus the way that you do, and that you want to live your life, above reproach at all costs. And it's just been an honoring blessing to be able to have you guys be part of this journey with us. It's just amazing.
We feel the same about you guys. Yeah, I love you.
Yeah, I do. So Mark's remarks said really quick. He said, because he must have said it when I said about the pop cans. He said stupid pop cans, because Josh and I had done a funny video about it before, like stupid pop cans. And then he said, I said it then, and I'll say it again. That event was awesome. Yeah. I enjoyed you guys more than the host.
It was amazing. Nice. Amazing.
Yeah, so we really want to appreciate you guys. Let everybody know how much we appreciate you guys, how fun this was, and that the next time the paper is going to be over here, and that we're going to give them the 3rd degree. So that'll be a lot of fun.
I need the questions in advance, though.
No, absolutely not. There's no fun in that.
We can give her a couple, a couple.
No, we don't do that. We don't do that. Sweaty. So do you have any final thoughts before we shut it down today? No?
Thanks for letting us crash your house, too.
It's fun.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for being here. We really want to thank you so much. If you have any questions, you guys are looking for just to get connected in a special way. Maybe you just need to have somebody to talk to. You know, we want to let you know that we're available, completely free. You know, you can reach out to us. We want to be able to get on a call with you and be able to just talk to you. Maybe there's some type of hope that we can offer you in your situation, and go from there. And if it's something that works, then maybe we can have some type of relationship with you in that way. And that would be very awesome for us to be able to do that. So thank you so much for everybody that's been here today, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.